Welcome to the Intentional Household podcast. Today, we're talking about something that affects way more women than we realize, pelvic floor health. If you've ever asked yourself, why didn't anyone tell me about this? You're not alone. I'm joined by Sandra Ghaly, a pelvic floor physiotherapist and founder of Makewell Health. Our goal of today's episode is to help women and their partners understand how symptoms like pain during intercourse, leakage, and exhaustion are often linked to an invisible physical, emotional, and mental load. Like always, we hope to empower listeners to take action and find the support that they need. Sandra, welcome to the podcast. I'd love to start by hearing about your story and why you have such a passion for pelvic health physiotherapy.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Laura. Pelvic floor for me started years ago. After graduating from school, I was working in a traditional ortho setting and seeing many women who were coming in with back pain, core weakness, hip pain. And a lot of them were getting better, but they just weren't getting 100% better. And there was always something missing. A lot of these women also had children, and a lot of these symptoms had started at that point. At that point, I started to look into pelvic floor physiotherapy and was learning a little bit more about it, and did decide at that point to explore it a little bit further and get my certification. And actually, at that same time, I was struggling with my own pelvic floor issues. So I was experiencing urge incontinence, which is leakage of urine with that strong need to go to the bathroom. And so, at that point, I was being referred by my doctor to urologists and neurologists and all sorts of specialists, and they weren't able to find anything. And it wasn't until I went in for my certification that, I had to get my own pelvic floor assessed, and they realized that I had a very tight pelvic floor.
Wow.
So my muscles just were no longer able to function properly at that point. And so through that, I was able to treat myself. And I was just amazed at the recovery and the research around it, and decided, to go full force into it. Then, years down the road, I had kids, and I struggled with even, different, but more pelvic floor issues. At that point, it was, pelvic organ prolapse, and really just realized at that point, the gap in healthcare when it comes to pelvic floor health. So much is not being told to these women having children. And so it really just emphasized my love and passion for it. So that's how it brought me here.
So when I had my first, she was, I think this is around the winter time. So let's just say she was 4 months old, and I would go on walks with a friend and carry her in the carrier. And I remember having such a sore back. And my friend was the first person who had ever mentioned anything to me about pelvic floor physio. And she said, that might be connected. Do you know what that is? And I was like, oh yeah, of course I know what that is. And then after I was like, what is it? And that's how I found you. And you supported me throughout, that postpartum period all the way until I had my second and third and afterwards. And you were instrumental in my recovery, both physically and emotionally. But, it made me think about my experience and so many other women and how they don't know about it. And why do you think that is?
I think society has done a really poor job in making moms believe that this is just something they have to live with, that this is just the cost of having children. And so many women out there just think that they have to, that this is inevitable. I think pelvic health is still such a missing piece in postpartum care. And it really encompasses the entire body. You go through so many changes during your pregnancy and so many more changes postpartum. And then you have the added lifting the children and the mental stress and the mental load, really. And all of that gets carried in the body. And so things like back pain, actually, what we now know is that 95% of women with low back pain have pelvic floor dysfunction. So it's such a huge piece of the puzzle that's often being missed.
It is. And now knowing what I know with friends who do have sore backs, I always suggest you, even if they have kids who are maybe 8 or older, I always say you need to check out pelvic floor physio because they will help you.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's never too late to start. And especially if you are the default planner, the worrier, the fixer, you're probably carrying so much tension inside your pelvic floor. You'll feel it in your jaw, you'll feel it in your shoulders and glutes. It's most likely in your pelvic floor as well, but you're probably not feeling it in the same way. Instead, it's presenting itself as, leakage or just like a disconnect from the pelvic floor. So it's great advice from your end.
I mean, we all knew that women carry an invisible load, but I never thought about how it would affect women in other places of their bodies.
Yeah. We know now that the pelvic floor is not just physical, it's directly linked to our nervous system. So that mental and emotional stress, the pelvic floor carries it. And what we end up doing is holding it by clenching all day long. And that's not great for our pelvic floors. It's not great for our entire bodies. There's a misconception that tight means strong. That's not true when it comes to really any muscle in the body, but especially the pelvic floor. Tight often leads to dysfunction. And then those muscles are no longer being able to be engaged properly. They're not lengthening and contracting the way that they should. And then in turn, they're unable to support those really crucial organs inside the pelvic floor.
I think that a lot of women who do their Kegels, who are working out, who are following healthy diets, think that that is enough. But are you saying that it goes deeper than that because clenching or doing your Kegels may actually be counterproductive?
Absolutely. You could be doing all of the things. You could be working out, you could be eating clean, you could be drinking your collagen. But at the end of the day, if you don't have that awareness of your pelvic floor, you're missing such a crucial piece of your health. So Kegels are kind of what people have heard of. If they've heard of any sort of pelvic floor exercise, what we found is Kegels are actually not appropriate for many women because if they're already overactive and over tight, those Kegels are actually potentially causing more strain to the pelvic floor.
Okay. Wow.
A lot of it is just checking in with yourself. It's just learning how to tune into your body and connect more with that core system. So when I say core, talking about the pelvic floor, I'm talking about your abdominals, I'm talking about your diaphragm, right? And for so many of us, it just starts with a deep breath because we're constantly just, we're breathing up here. We have so much on the go. And that diaphragm and the pelvic floor, they work together, right? So think about like muscles that are clenched, breathing that's shallow. And then here you are being like, gotta do something. And you're just squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. Most likely that's not going to help. So a lot of the work that we do is actually learning how to down-regulate the nervous system, down-regulate the pelvic floor, teach it how to engage when it's supposed to engage and relax when it's supposed to relax.
I remember the breathing was a challenge for me, but really like a lot of us could be breathing wrong.
Yeah. Breathing is actually much harder than it sounds because of that diaphragmatic engagement. We think breathing is just an involuntary action, but when you actually properly engage, it's a muscle. Your diaphragm is one of your core muscles. When you actually learn how to engage it properly, all the other muscles in your core start to feed off that. And like I said, for so many of us, breathing is not even something that we think about. So we'll go to the workouts and we'll do all the things, follow all the fads. But what is it to us if we're holding our breath all day long, right? And then add on to that the mental planning, right? That the kids need this, the signing up for camps, the buying them clothes, the working yourself, having dinner ready on the table. And when in that day are you ever going to stop and just check in with yourself? So the breathing component, I'd say, is one of the biggest pieces that we're missing when it comes to our overall health and especially our pelvic floor.
It can be very powerful.
Huge.
Do you feel like you're constantly juggling work, family, and home life, only to end each day exhausted and overwhelmed? At Intentional Household, we specialize in optimizing your household so that it functions like a well-oiled machine. We're not just about hiring help, we design a system where everything works together seamlessly. Imagine more time for what energizes you and less for what drains you. Learn how we can help you take back control at intentionalhousehold.com. When I was working out yesterday, there was someone else working out with her trainer, and she had commented on how he loves to get her to skip.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, he doesn't know what it's like to be a woman and to skip. So it got me thinking about what is normal versus what's common. Is it common or is it normal for someone to not be able to skip or jump? So I'd love to go through some of these items, and then you can clarify whether this is normal, a normal symptom, or common.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about skipping.
Sure. Leakage with jumping, sneezing, coughing, laughing. We see that a lot, especially in that pregnancy, postpartum period. Common, not normal.
Okay.
It's a dysfunction, usually of the muscles that are supporting your bladder. And this is not just exclusive to the bladder. Sometimes we see that happening with bowels as well. So fecal incontinence or urgency in that case. So definitely common, not normal.
Okay. What about pain during intimacy?
Yeah, that's another really big one. And that is one that is actually under-identified because still many women are not discussing it and talking about it. It's one of those things that, again, I see more often women believing that it's just part of, the
Life.
post. Yeah,
Wow.
it's part of life.
Okay.
Yeah. There's so many factors that can play into pain with intercourse or intimacy. And although it can be common, especially in the postpartum period, and then we see it again ramp up in the perimenopause and menopause period, it is not normal and it most definitely is treatable.
What about feeling heaviness or pressure down there?
Yeah, that's a really big one. And I'm glad that you brought that up because that's, again, often something that women they get used to the feeling or they just think it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them associated with just giving birth. Heaviness and pressure in the pelvic floor, especially if it gets worse after a long day or being on your feet for a long time, could be a sign of pelvic organ prolapse. And that's something that's actually progressive. We don't normally see prolapses resolve themselves without the proper treatment. So that's a really big one to check in with yourself about and get looked into if you're experiencing any heaviness or pressure.
What about waking up multiple times through the night to pee or feeling urgency?
Yeah. That's a good one. You'll often hear in the clinic women say, "Oh, that's always been me. I've always woken up 3 or 4 times a night to pee. I have a small bladder." Actually, a lot of people think they just have a small bladder.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually not something that we want to see. We want to see that you're waking up 0 at most, maybe 1 time a night to go to the bathroom. And during the day, you should be able to wait a few hours in between bathroom usage. A small bladder is actually something that people believe that it's not treatable. A lot of it has to do with your ability to train the bladder. So we do a lot of bladder retraining. Just education is huge here when it comes to bladder retraining. And then also teaching those pelvic floor muscles to, again, properly support a full bladder without sending that signal to the nervous system saying, panic, it's time to go to the bathroom again.
So really with all these things that people are living with that they don't have to, these are extra things that are adding to the invisible load. So, right, like if they're not sleeping well or they're thinking about, how many times am I going to have to wake up, working out and not being able to jump or skip, pain during intimacy. These are all extra things that women are thinking about in addition to just living regular life that they have to take on. And that's just added stress.
Yeah, it's huge. It's affecting their quality of life. And it's limiting their ability to show up fully to their family. oftentimes they're putting these symptoms aside because they have something bigger to focus on. The kids need their attention more, their relationship, their job, whatever it may be. And so oftentimes it's, okay, well, this is not important right now, or I don't have time for this right now. Or maybe, they don't even know that they can treat it. So it's just something that they feel they have to live with. And the issue with that is it becomes compounded, right? And it, like you said, it adds to that mental pressure, mental stress. And then they get into this negative cycle where they're just then holding in more tension or, avoiding activities. And that's really the last thing that we want. If you are someone that doesn't feel comfortable jumping on the trampoline with their children, or has to wear black yoga pants to your workouts, or, is avoiding intimacy because you don't know how to say to your partner, it doesn't feel the same, then that's weighing on you. And it's essentially weighing on the whole family because your confidence is affected here as a mom. So yeah, it's a really big one. And we don't often think about the whole family when it comes to pelvic health. It does absolutely affect everyone around you.
No, it never crossed my mind that it does affect the whole family. And I think that so many women go through this alone and they don't communicate it with their partner or maybe even friends. But how do you think communicating it to our partner would better support them?
Yeah, I think it's letting them know that it's not just the pelvic floor. It's the whole body. It's like I said, it's her quality of life. To be able to confidently and clearly communicate that, have that support and say, hey, are you able to, watch the kids while I go to my appointment? Or just simply, this is what I'm noticing or what I'm struggling with. I just want to let you know that it's on my mind. Even just starting that conversation can allow your partner to check in, to support you fully, and to be there as you navigate it. I think that so many moms, when they think of treating their pelvic floor, they're thinking like a huge commitment and hours and weeks. It's not like that. It's really just takes checking in with yourself and just starting small. It's being able to even just identify what it is that doesn't feel right, and then opening up that conversation, whether it's with your partner, whether it's with a healthcare professional to say, hey, I'm not feeling like myself. What can I do about this?
Do mornings in your household feel like a race against the clock? Is the chaos creeping into every part of your life? Intentional Household transforms disorganized homes into peaceful and efficient spaces. We identify and solve the hidden challenges that are stealing your time and energy. Let us show you how we can help at intentionalhousehold.com. Yeah, I can imagine that there are a lot of women listening who can relate to this and maybe feeling overwhelmed, but thinking, I don't have the time for this. So what would you suggest they do just to start figuring it out?
I would start with just checking in. We have a great pelvic health self-check-in quiz that we can share with our listeners that really gives you a little bit more insight on what your symptoms may mean. And then book in with a pelvic physiotherapist, let them guide you. And I think really at the end of the day, education is empowerment. So even just understanding that this is happening because of something that's changed and that, you're able to gain control over it again, I think is really empowering. But really simply opening up the conversation, I think is a great place to start. Like you said, if it wasn't for your friend walking with you, you might have not known about this. And when women start to open up the conversation, you'll be surprised who else is saying, yeah, me too. I'm struggling with this as well. I guess you're really realizing that you're not alone. So many women also think, well, I'll wait till I'm done having babies, or maybe menopause will fix this. So they kind of keep waiting and live with their symptoms a little bit longer. You don't have to wait. This is something that you can get started with today. So what we're noticing is that menopause can actually compound these symptoms. So unresolved symptoms combined with hormone fluctuations. I mean, with the decrease of estrogen in menopause, we lose health of our tissues, our bladder thins, our pelvic floor muscles have a harder time engaging. And so if you're having leakage, if you're having pain with intimacy, that's actually something that we can see getting worse as you age, as opposed to just kind of go away on its own.
And that was exactly my fear. I remember thinking, if you wait, it could only potentially get worse. And if you have more and more children, I could imagine it getting worse.
Absolutely. I mean, with every pregnancy, with every delivery, no matter, how it happened, we're getting kind of more of those compounded signs and symptoms of pelvic floor stretch, clenching, diastasis recti, which is the abdominal separation. And then, like you said, even just having that back pain, that wrist pain, that knee pain postpartum, we're not only having such drastic changes in our body, but now our physical activity looks very different. We're doing these repetitive motions every day, holding our babies in awkward positions to feed, lifting them up and down 50 times a day. A lot of us are also not sleeping great, and we're sitting in prolonged positions, which are going to cause some joint stiffness. So everything is looking very different after, but here we are thinking, well, why don't I feel the same? Well, I guess this is just normal, right? It really just takes awareness and education, even if it's just some postural changes, even if it's just something you do 2 minutes a day to get started on feeling better.
And I think one of the great things about physios is that, as much as I loved seeing you and we connected so well, you were there to help me. And then I kind of flew away after, right? Because once I was ready and I was kind of recovered, if you will, then our time was done, right? It's not meant to be a lifelong thing. It's to get the body back into a state where there's no pain or you're not experiencing the symptoms and can continue with regular life.
100%. The least amount of times I can see someone to help them meet their goals, the happier we both are. Life is busy. The last thing I want for you is to have a million more appointments. By identifying the issue, giving you strategies that you can do at home, whether that's exercises, retraining your bladder, lifestyle changes, whatever it may be. I want you to have the tools for yourself at home. I want you to have the education. Sometimes I think I talk too much in my sessions to my patients, but it's only because I want them to know everything so that they can go home and they can understand, okay, I know why I'm doing this. I understand why this is happening. I think being confused, it just adds to the issue, but having that clarity and that empowerment is the next step. You go off, you feel better, and then everyone's happier. But the second something starts to creep up again, you know exactly where you need to go back to. You know exactly what to do to start to regain that control.
100%. And back to the partner and communicating to them, hey, as much as I think that individuals should do that, right? And I don't think I shared much with my husband. It is really nice to have someone to be supporting you and kind of like your cheerleader and to be able to answer your questions, because that is something that your partner or, your friends, they can cheer you on, but like you or like a pelvic floor physio really understands and can really help you to gain that confidence. So yes, as much as it helps physically, it really can help with your emotional state.
I completely agree. With every single person I see, we touch on that. Pain is a huge one. So let's talk about pain with intimacy, low back pain, pelvic pain. There's a huge piece of our nervous system when it comes to pain. This is our nervous system perceiving threat. This is protecting us. Pain signals are a way for our brain to protect us. You roll your ankle, it starts to swell up. Your brain is sending pain to the area saying, hey, stay off me. I don't want any more injury. When we're having ongoing pain, that's not necessarily a sign of tissue injury. That's not necessarily from just, the stretch of the pelvic floor muscles during a delivery. This could be your brain perceiving threat and whichever, way that it does. And we don't always know why in that moment, but just tuning into that. And even if it's someone to say, hey, how are you feeling? What's on your mind lately? Really helps them connect that mind to physical piece. And I think that when we're able to do that, we really see the benefits of pelvic floor physiotherapy. It's not just physical. It's not just the pelvic floor. I'm asking you about your sleep. I'm asking you about your diet. I'm asking you, what you do for work, what you do for exercise. I'm asking you how long your commute is, because all of that is giving me a picture into your stress levels, your posture throughout your day, how much tension you're carrying. And so it's really a whole body thing.
Yeah, like they really need to bring in their night guards. So you can take a look to see how much clenching has been done.
Yeah. And like on that note, you'd be surprised at one of the main things we see is like jaw pain when it comes to pelvic floor tension, because if you're clenching your pelvic floor, you're most likely clenching your jaw, right? And so, yes, we touched on that as well. It's a big one.
I imagine there are people listening who are experiencing some of these symptoms, which we've established are not normal. So do you have any suggestions on how they can gain control?
Yeah, it really can take as little as 5 minutes in your day. I shared a resource with the listeners on just 5 daily strategies that you can do to gain more control of your pelvic health. In that, it starts with simple strategies like taking a deep breath, not rushing to the bathroom, not peeing just in case, checking in with yourself. So we'll share that with our listeners. It really just starts there.
In terms of peeing just in case, I'm just thinking about acts we do with our kids.
Yeah.
We're leaving the house. Okay, go to the bathroom. I don't have to go. We'll go just in case.
Yeah.
Is that something that we should not be doing?
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on the age of the child and how in tune they are with their bladder and bowels. Okay. Generally speaking, it is not something that we want to really push and insist if we don't have to. So, anything in moderation is okay. When we're making it a constant habit, that's when we can run into issues. And so what I'll usually say is if you are having a short drive, going somewhere where you know that there's a bathroom and your child is saying, I don't need to, try to trust that they can hold it in until you get there. But if you're going to go on a road trip or if it's going to be a long drive, or if you're going somewhere where there's no bathroom, it's okay once in a while to have them use the bathroom. And it's no different for us adults, right? I know I have a lot of patients who pee just right before they leave the house, even though, exactly.
Yes.
And so what that's doing is it's just teaching your bladder not to fully fill and to send those signals to your brain saying, I need to pee before your bladder is full. Eventually that can compound into frequency, which is having to go to the bathroom, every hour because your bladder's not able to fully fill.
That's great to know.
Yeah, it's a good one.
This has been such a powerful conversation. Before we wrap it up, I'd love to know if there are any myths out there that you would like to bust.
This is just what happens after kids. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Normal does not mean inevitable.
Okay.
There is treatment. You do not have to live with it and you're not broken. You just need the right support.
Support like you.
Appreciate it.
Sandra, if anyone wants to check you out, where can they find you?
Sure. So you can find us at our website, www.makewellhealth.ca. You can also follow us on Instagram at makewell.health, or you could follow me as well at sandraghaly.pt.
Thanks so much for being here, Sandra.
Thank you, Laura. This was just so fun.
Thank you so much for listening to the Intentional Household podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Join us on Instagram, YouTube, and Pinterest at Intentional Household. where we're sharing even more tips, tools, and resources to help your home run with more ease, intention, and joy. Until next time, here's to creating a household that supports the life you want to live.